Assalamualaikum semuanya. Eh, bukan hanya join kemudian ditinggal ya device-nya. Ayo dibuka semua kameranya sebelum dimulai. Ini mana ini yang lain? Ya, ini sudah Aprilia. Yang lain? Oke, kita sambil menunggu pemateri hadir, begitu ya teman-teman sekalian. Beliaunya akan hadir insya Allah pukul 2 tepat. Sebelum itu, eh, saya jelaskan terlebih dahulu untuk peraturan kegiatan Accounting Talk Series hari ini. Semua mahasiswa yang mengikuti kegiatan ini harus mengikuti hingga selesai. Nanti insya Allah kurang lebih ada 3 sesi, 3 materi untuk kegiatan hari ini, tapi ketiga-tiganya masih relevan dengan public accounting, public sector accounting, gitu ya. Kemudian ketika nanti pemateri mulai penjelasan, begitu, ataupun ketika sambutan dari kepala departemen nanti, silakan mikrofonnya dimatikan. Namun di tengah-tengah kalau seandainya memang ada yang ingin ditanyakan, jika itu di luar sesi diskusi begitu ya, itu mungkin bisa drop message-nya di chat box dulu, baru nanti saya persilahkan bertanya jika itu ada di tengah-tengah penjelasan. Jadi kalau seandainya ada yang sangat tertarik dengan fokus bahasan yang saat itu tengah dijelaskan oleh pemateri begitu, maka silahkan langsung saja drop message-nya di chat, kemudian akan saya persilahkan untuk bertanya secara langsung. Atau nanti juga akan ada Q&A session di akhir. Oke, mohon maaf sebelumnya, apakah suara saya terdengar dengan jelas?
Terdengar dengan jelas, Bu.
Halo? Apakah suara saya terdengar? Oke.
Sudah terdengar.
Kenapa, kenapa nggak ada yang mau open mic? Belum dimulai ini. Oke, kemudian eh semua mahasiswa dihimbau untuk menyalakan kameranya ya untuk sepanjang kegiatan. Jangan membuat pematerinya nanti merasa kesepian gitu ya. Karena beliaunya nanti open cam sendiri sama saya. Jadi dimohon kerjasamanya untuk bisa open kamera ketika kegiatan berlangsung. Lalu untuk semua mahasiswa yang hadir pada kegiatan hari ini, karena ini juga mewakili kelas untuk akuntansi sektor publik gitu ya, dimohon untuk bisa melaporkan hasil kegiatannya, baik itu berupa laporan ataupun summary dari apa yang dibahas pada kegiatan hari ini, dibahas dan didiskusikan terutama, dan juga menyertakan foto keikutsertaan pada kegiatan hari ini. Itu. Dan yang lebih penting lagi untuk mahasiswa yang memang berhalangan hadir, yang tidak bisa hadir pada kegiatan hari ini, dimohon untuk bisa menghubungi Bu Miranti begitu ya, untuk melaporkan ketidakhadirannya. Apakah ada yang ingin ditanyakan terlebih dahulu sebelum kegiatan dimulai? Silakan, ada yang ingin ditanyakan? Oke, baik. Kita tunggu sebentar lagi ya. Terima kasih.
Hello, good afternoon, Bu Aulia.
Yeah, good afternoon, Bu Diana.
The Professor Callum has arrived here, or we
Uh,
for him to join the Zoom meeting?
yes, he's still in preparation currently. I will get that, yes. Because it's early morning, Bu Diana, in the UK, so Prof. Callum also still adjust with the routine, his routines, I bet. Siapa yang pasang spotlight ini? Okay, I think Professor Callum already here.
Hello, Earlier. How are you?
Hi, Prof. Yeah, I'm
Can
good.
you hear me?
Yes, it's clear. So is everything
I cannot
fine
hear
from your
you.
side? Oh, really? So for the committee, can you hear me?
Yeah, Bu Aul, we can hear you all.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Professor Callum. I think I have no problem with my side. So probably we can fix from your side? Hello, Prof.
Hello?
Kalum? Yes, can you hear me? I can hear you clearly, Prof.
I can't hear. Uh,
Okay.
Perhaps you can chat Professor Calum Bu Alia and then ask him to like
Okay.
trying to start from the beginning. Just like out and yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Prof. How
Oh,
about
yeah.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I think it's with my headphones. So let me try it again.
Okay. Now I cannot hear you. But I think your microphone now is the problem because we cannot hear you. Previously, we can hear you, Prof, but right now we cannot.
How about now?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, that's great. Okay, may we start it, Prof?
Yeah, we can start now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And the head of accounting department, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Negeri Malang, Your Excellency Dr. Dianatin Ira Fahmi, Excellencies, the Chair in Accounting, Sheffield University Management School, the University of Sheffield, Professor Kelum Jayasinghe, who is also our prominent speakers for today's program, the lecturers of the accounting department who attend this program today, and the most important invitees today, our beloved accounting students. Good afternoon, everybody in Indonesia, and also very good morning to Professor Kelum in the UK.
Good morning. Good
Okay,
morning.
yes, very good morning. Okay, for today I'll be in charge as the moderator, Prof. Kelum, and I welcome you all to the second accounting talk series held by the accounting department, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Negeri Malang in 2023. And for the second round, we will discuss governance, investment, and also sustainability performance on how we can support the achievement of the SDGs, especially the sustainable cities and communities through responsible consumptions and productions. So before we officially begin our program, we will read first and listen to our national anthem Indonesia Raya, and then followed by Mars Universitas Negeri Malang.
Shall I share the slides?
Not yet, not yet, Prof.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Okay, without further ado, I'd like to invite our head of department, Dr. Diana Tin Ira Fahmi, to give the welcome remark.
Thank you, Bu Aulia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and very good morning to Professor Callum. How are you, Professor
Oh.
Callum?
Yeah, good now. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you very much for joining this event, Professor Callum. So the honorable speaker, Professor Callum Jayasinghe from University of Sheffield, United Kingdom, the moderator, Ibu Aulia Herdiani, the committee, and all the audience, accounting students, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you to our accounting department's academic event. We name the event as Accounting Talk Series. And today's event, we have an interesting theme about governance, investment, and sustainability performance, the relation between accounting and also SDGs perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest from the United Kingdom. He's actually our young professor, again, Professor Callum Jayasinghe, and he is an expert in public sector accounting and also in qualitative research, if I'm not mistaken, right, Prof? You are very keen to qualitative research and especially in the area of public sector accounting. So this event would be a great chance for us to learn about the latest news about public sector accounting and accountability practices in less developed countries. That's the topic that Professor Callum will give today. And this topic is very relevant to us, particularly for you students who are currently studying in public sector accounting course. So if you have any question, don't be hesitant to ask Professor Callum, and he would be very happy to answer all your questions. So finally, I want to thank you all of you for being here. This event shows our commitment to keep learning and sharing ideas together. So I encourage all of you, my students, and perhaps other audience who participate in this event to actively engage in the discussions of this guest lecture. Once again, a warm welcome to Professor Callum and also to the moderator, Ibu Aulia, to all of our students and to the committee. Thank you very much for arranging this event and make this event possible. Let's make the most of this learning opportunity. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the insightful message to Diana and also for the welcome remark. All right, everybody, before we start the main sessions, let me introduce our speaker today, Professor Callum Jayasinghe, who served as the chair in accounting at the Sheffield University Management School, SUMS, the University of Sheffield. He joined to the university in January 2023 after having previously held positions at the University of Essex as the chair in accounting as well. He was also accounting lecturer at the University of Wales, Aberystwyth, and the University of Bradford, UK, and the University of Colombo, Sri Lanka. His international visibility is evidenced in his extensive profile of publications and reputed journals, including Accounting, Auditing, and Accountability Journal, AAAJ, Critical Perspective on Accounting, CPA, Accounting Forum, and QRAM, and so forth. Currently, he serves on the editorial board of GPBFM, GAEE, and AAFJ. He is also special issue editor for RAEE, GAEE, AAFJ, and also GBFM. He has contributed to several edited books on accounting and development policy, and then presented at many international conferences and workshops. He has held visiting appointment at the University of Southeastern Norway, the University of Glasgow, the University of Southampton, and the University of Cardiff. It's very proud that he also conducted research collaborations with the University of Gadjah Mada and the University of Mercu Buana, Indonesia. Massey University in New Zealand, and several universities in Sri Lanka. He's an active member of the very famous associations in the UK, British Accounting and Finance Association, BAFA, as the Special Interest Group on Accounting and Finance in Emerging Economies, African Accounting and Finance Associations, and Comparative Asia-Africa Governmental Accounting Group. Today, Prof. Callum will shed light on the public sector accounting and accountability practices in emerging economies. Prof. Callum, do you need help to share the material?
Yeah, I can try it from here first, and then I can manage it easily. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Give me a minute. I hope I can share it from here. I don't think I can share from here because let me check that. Oh yeah, I think so. I can share.
Professor?
Yeah, I'm trying to share.
Oh, okay.
I think it's not allowing me to share because you are the host, isn't it? That's why.
Oh, okay. So for the committee, please
Maybe
help
you
to
can
set.
run the slides. That's fine. You
Okay,
know,
okay.
there's one slide set research in accounting,
Sustainability.
not accounting, the other research in accounting in emerging economies. That one. Public sector accounting and
Okay.
accountability in emerging economies. If you can share those slides, that's good.
Okay, so the first one will be the
Public sector
public
accounting and
sector
accountability
accounting.
practices in
Okay.
emerging economies. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's set. Yes, the time is yours, Prof.
All right. So you need to help me running the slides. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
sure.
So the yeah. Go to the first one so we can start explain the background, what I'm doing, and then go to this slide later. Yeah. Go to the first slide. Yeah. Go back. Yeah. Okay. So I start the lecture now. This is the plan for today. So in the first hour of our session, this lecture, I talk about public sector accounting and accountability practices in emerging economies. So I explain what's meant by emerging economies, and then we focus on the general context of public sector accounting and accountability. And then what I will do is at the end, I mean, after this first session, this 1 hour session, then give you opportunity to ask questions, like probably 20 minutes, and then you can ask questions in relation to my presentation. And if you have any other issues about some things that you see in your country happening in the public sector, and then asking questions in relation to this talk that I'm doing. And then the follow-up session, in the second session, we are continuing it, but we take a 5 minutes break. And then second session, I will focus on the sustainability. So my plan is to broadly introduce to sustainability, what is mean by sustainability, and then straight away going into the context of the public sector, and then understand how this sustainability is connected with the public sector, and what issues the public sector entities like local governments, public sector organizations in general, and what are the problems and the issues they are facing, and what are the research that we are doing in relation to public sector, what research are conducted in the public sector. Because I think there are many research already done in relation to public sector accounting and sustainability. So I'm not going to give detailed account of public sector sustainability related research, because I think your level there, what you need to understand is what is mean by public sector and accountability, and how it works in the emerging economies, how we connect the sustainability with the public sector accounting and accountability practices. That's the sort of understanding I believe your level that you need to have, right? If I'm correct. Okay, so this is the plan. So let's start the first lecture in that case. This one, what accounting the emerging economies, what's mean the emerging economies, and then how the public sector operates in those contexts. So go to the second slide. Yeah, so go to the next slide. Yeah, so then when you say emerging economies, that's you need to understand what is this word, the emerging, that mean. Usually you heard the word less developed countries, low income countries, but the problem is when you say low income countries, there are other countries that still the economies are emerging. People say some middle income country in World Bank reports, but when you see the less developed countries and the middle income countries, the situations, the contexts are very, very similar. For example, Indonesia may be a middle income country, so they are better than Ethiopia or Mali, and kind of obviously Ethiopia normally people say is a less developed country, low income country. And then so how you differentiate this Ethiopia or Mali from Indonesia? Just because of some economic numbers, because there are many similarities when it comes to the broader environment of these countries, the middle income countries, even in China also emerging economy. People say it's a developed country, but still the Chinese, the regions are very much having similar issues to Indonesia and Malaysia and India. India so much, for example, if I go to more details, India, some cities and the locals are very poor, so poor, and some cities are more richer. So then this complexity exists in most of these emerging economies, or otherwise less developed countries or middle income countries. So if you say developed countries, in general, the US, UK, Scandinavian countries, European countries, this income distribution is very high, very efficient. In that sense, still the poor people exist, but there's a welfare system to look after them. So it's a more like well-established economies. They are economically, politically, and the political systems of these countries I mentioned, low-income countries and middle-income countries. There are so many of political issues, political involvement in the audit practice, and then the public sector organizations and so on. But in developed countries, the political involvement is less. There's no chance the politicians to manipulate the organized public sector organizations, because the public sector organizations are very much established and independent from political influence. Politicians involved just for the policy planning, but they are not involved with the local level operations of the public sector organizations or the entities. So what I'm saying is, I was trying to explain you why we use this word emerging economies, and then I discussed that with you. So Indonesia is one of the emerging economies, right? So if I go to this diagram, now here I am showing you this. In the middle, there's a public sector organization, or private sector, public sector, any organization. So there's the industry. So if it's a private sector, there's industry, manufacturing industry, service industry, or it's a public sector, broader public sector is the word I use in the inner circle after the organization in the middle. So then there's if it's a private sector, there's the capital markets, but it's not relevant to public sector. So ignore that one. And then outside, the political environment, economic environment, legal environment, cultural environment. There are policies, there are similar for environments that around the organizations. But as I said already about political environment, this culture, regulation, and economies are very different to developed countries, because economy is in the under state of development, still in the progression. Legal environment, regulations are there, but when it's come to practice, regulations not exactly operating in the same way, because there are so many of bypassing, manipulations, and various informalities. Informalities, I mean, formal regulations are not used, not applied very similar way into developing countries, because there's politicians are involved, some stakeholders are involved at the level of the implementation of regulations. So there are so many of stories you heard in Indonesia, you heard about in other countries, how the law and the institutions work in that sense. So go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So then in that case, there are stakeholders in this environment, the pressure groups, regulatory bodies, employees, customers, public. So the stakeholders situation, because of the four environments are different, the stakeholders, their behaviors are also very different. So I mean, to what extent the public involved with the pressure in these organizations and the governments in Indonesia, in these countries, is very different to what's happening in UK and US. Employees, their rights, and the labor market. If you see the labor market, there's so much of unemployment in these countries. And then the labor rights in the workplace is very different to the developed countries, because here in UK, for example, the labor rights are number one. So then the employees are very much protected with the minimum labor and all that. But in Indonesia, for example, or Sri Lanka or India, you can see because of the huge unemployment and the labor market is very much politically influenced. In garment factories in Bangladesh, for example, the so much of health and safety issues and the modern slavery, we call it modern slavery, because workers' rights are not protected in Bangladesh factories. These are some examples I'm saying. It's not same always about Indonesia, it's many countries in the world. So we are very similar to Indonesian context. So then employees' rights are very much not protected. So people are like having so many issues, assaulting and asked to work too many hours. So these sort of issues happening in the emerging economies, very different to developed countries. So then, okay, go to the next slide. So because of these factors, I highlighted the broader legal environment, economic environment, political and other cultural environments, and then the stakeholders are different. So because of that, so there are so many unique and something that not we see in the other developed countries. There's some things happening in relation to accounting as well. So then the small companies we have in because of the political and the economic factors of these countries, you can see, if you look at more broadly, and the researchers they have found it, there are many small companies, few owners, a few families are controlling the private sector companies. So family ownership is one of the factors. And in the private sector related, one of the issues is the weak capital market. There's no stronger capital market, independently managed capital market, political influence, and then weak accounting regulations. Accounting is there, but the implementation of the accounting and the law are very, very, very vague, very informal and weak. I mean, it's not something to hide that I read one of these your audit, Supreme Audit Institution reports about how the companies work in Indonesia. There's a publicly available audit report by the Supreme Audit Institution of Indonesia, how the corruption happened in the public sector organization. It's not that I'm saying, it's a publicly available document. You can read it, anyone. Just weak accounting regulations. So politicized unions, and some of the countries, political parties involved with the unions, and the unions are representing not the labor rights, the political interests. So these things are very much happening. So then because of that, the accounting in emerging economies, you can see very much accounting reports mainly for external parties, and internal accounting systems are very secretive. They have one to the tax department and other to their own decision making. So they use two accounting reports, some countries. So like I'm just picking up one or two examples. Informal performance measures, that mean the people's performances are measured not using management accounting systems. So you are learning in the management accounting class. So most of the time, informal connections, those who are closer to the supervisor and the manager, getting more rewards than the others who are resisting against the management. So these sort of informal factors are controlling the labor force in the emerging economies organization. So family controls and bureaucratic controls in the public, that mean the politicians are involved so much into public sector decision making in the organization. It's not independent based on the regulations and the policy, but the politicians are taking all the public sector decisions into their own hands. So these are the extremes, but I'm not saying all the emerging economies are doing this in a very bad way and there's nothing happening in emerging economies. But there's a mix of these things. Some countries work better than other countries, and some countries are worse. But none of these countries are working very much similar way to US, UK, or European countries, because they are very much distant from standard, rational, or expected level of performances in the public sector. So that's the point I'm making. Each country has its own characteristics, but all these countries are very much far away from ideal. Ideal mean the expected performance levels of the public sector because of these factors of political, cultural, economic, and regulations, because they are not working as we are expected, like in developed country. So some of the examples I mentioned in the slides, like the cheap labor, high power distance, politicized unions, for example, those factors. Because of these factors, the regulations, the economy, and then the other broader factors are not operating as expected, right? So that's the sort of background I'm just setting up. I'm not talking about accounting. I'm talking about the background, the context, we call context in emerging economies. So when you talk about accounting and accountability, so you can't ignore the context, because you think what I'm talking here is, what is this guy is talking, because I'm talking about a broader environment. But accounting is a technology. So you apply accounting into organization. Accounting is a technology. It's a kind of, you are thinking about how to do debit and credit, how to prepare annual report, financial statements, how to prepare balance sheets and profit and loss statements, how we report that. That is accounting. But this accounting cannot work without people. So without people, and then when people are managing these accounts, they are connected with the broader context. So they are connected with the broader context. The organizations they work are connected with the external environment. External environment. When you say external environment, there are stakeholders, there are different political, cultural, economic factors affecting the organizations that they work. So they can't account ignoring the environments. So they are part of the environment, right? So that is why I introduced this accounting context, I call it. So when you are studying accounting, you can learn two things. One is accounting systems and how to report, how to account. That's accounting technology. The other side is the accounting's connection with the context. So when you connect the context with accounting not operates as you read in the textbooks. You can read about accounting in the textbooks, but to understand the real accounting, the reality of accounting in practice, you need to look at the context, right? That's why context is very important. So when you are researching about accounting practice, you need to look at the context, organizational context, and then context outside the organization as well, right? So I think I simplified it. Maybe you can ask questions later. Okay, go to the next slide. So yeah, so when it's come to now I'm trying to relate it to the public sector. So what is the public sector accounting? So public sector accounting about it is slightly different to the private sector. So these accounts are prepared by the government authorities and to report their financial performances, like for example, local government. So when the local government doing accounting, the public sector objective is not profits, right? Their objective is not profits. So private sector main thing is the profit. The public sector is, you all know, I don't need to explain details, but public sector is there with they have the incomes from tax collections and some other various sources. This money, the income they come in public sector collected, they spend this money for the public welfare, right? So maintaining the public welfare. So in that case, the public want to know, and then the government and the ministries, they want to know how the public sector organizations perform in relation to the expenditure and the income. So income and the expenditure. So for the local governments and most of the public sector organizations, the income, the money is coming, the funds are coming from the central government. So central government allocate from the central government budget. That's what the usual thing. So when they allocate, they have to find out how the local governments are spending their budgets at the local government level. So and the cities, so development of the cities, how much the budget and what budget requirements, how these budgets are spent. So that is where I mentioned here the resource allocation. So public sector budgeting is very important in the public sector accounting. So public sector budgets create the accountability as well. So then in some sense, so there should be a transparency in relation to how the public sector budget is managed. That means how much money is spent to what. So whether it's represent the government interest, represent the public interest. That's where the idea of participatory budgeting came in. You probably heard participatory budgeting in the local government level. Why? The reason of public sector participatory budgeting is to make public into the decision-making, resource allocation, decision-making. So public sector accounting is in general is about measuring the performances of the public sector organizations and then getting the legitimacy on this, what they are doing. And legitimacy means assuring whether they are doing the things according to their main purpose. And to what extent the public are involved and the public interest are maintained by the public sector officials working in the public sector organization. That's the purpose of public sector accounting. And in one way to understand the resource allocation, whether it's done according to the regulations and the policies, and then to what extent this public sector decision making involved with the public interest. Because public sector organizations are serving to the public, right? Representing the government officials and the elected members of the parliament at the top. So officials are supporting the officials and the politicians, politically appointed the public representatives. They are working together to implement this public sector budget. Okay, so go to the next one. Next slide. Yeah. So there are three bases that the public sector accounting is maintained. So they are usually in the private sector, is the accrual basis. So future and expenses and the current and the future expenses are recorded as far as they are in the accounting year. So we prepare the accounts on the basis of accrual. You all know that. I'm not going to teach about accrual accounting and cash accounting. But what matters in my discussion is the public sector, how they do the accounts. So historically, I mean, most of the cases, even now, the public sector accounts are prepared on the basis of cash. So cash basis. So that means what expenditure and the income and expenditure occurred during the year. So in terms of cash. So then we get the budget from the government and how much this budget spent, how much budget saved, what's the deficit. That's the sort of way we were doing it. But in the recent past, because of this new public sector reforms mean the people realize, and the World Bank, IMF, and various transnational organizations, even NGOs, there were criticisms about how the public money is being used to, there were corruptions, there were political influences, and various abnormalities, and then various manipulations. So big misappropriation, you can use so many words. The simple thing is this, because of the cash accounting, and one simple example, you can produce some receipts and show the accountability by producing some fake documents. So they can get the money out from the system easily when you have cash basis accounting. So then there was World Bank, and the IMF, they are the ones regulating the public finances in the world. So they propose and they force the emerging economies, because of the problems in the political and cultural influence in the public sector organizations, corruption, for example. So the World Bank and IMF influenced the emerging economies to apply accrual-based accounting. Accrual-based accounting. That means private sector accounting practices to the public sector. Private sector accounting practices to the public sector. So because the private sector use accruals and public sector use cash basis, so then accrual-based practice being introduced, promoted to the public sector. There were these reforms, popular reforms. Go to the next slide. Then I think I am referring to those reforms in the next slide if I write. Go to the next slides. So then, because the IMF and the World Bank expectation, go to the next slide there earlier, and expectation was that that the private sector performing very well, very efficiently, because of the accrual-based accounting practices. So they introduced and they trained the public sector staff to apply accrual-based accounting in the public sector. That's where the idea international public sector accounting standards are developed. That means accrual-based accounting, and for the public sector. So if you can see, international public sector IPSAS board consists of 18 countries, of which 15 are drawn from IFAC countries, and then so they try to introduce private sector accounting into the public sector, and then they call it IPSAS standards for public sector accounting. Public sector accounting standards, they call it. So that means to promote the accrual-based practices in the public sector. So then what happened? So I'm talking about two things. One is cash accounting was the practice in the past, in the history, and now IPSAS introduced IPSAS standards for the public sector, and then people were trained, and this is happened in the go to next slide. Go to the next slide. So I think it's happened under the context of new public management or new public governance. We call it popularly NPM, NPG. So that means NPG, new public governments came because of the failure of new public management. So new public management is simply about bringing the private sector practice into public sector. So that means accruals. That's what the idea. So then everything is very similar to what you find in Drury's textbook about management accounting and basic financial accounting, the books that you read about the private sector. So exact idea came. So what happened in the public sector then? Even including UK, the many countries, they even try to use balance scorecard, some of these countries. balanced scorecard into private public sector. But it never becomes successful. And it's become another system another alternative system to public sector, rather than public sector properly applying the private sector practices. What they try to do was, many countries, it become dual system. Dual system means there are some reports prepared on the cash basis, some reports prepared basis of accrual system. So future expenses and future revenues considered, then they prepare some. So then many local governments, many governments, they prepare two accounts: cash-based accounts, accrual-based accounts. And even with the accrual-based accounts, this corruption remained. Even the government, none of these countries managed to eliminate the corruption by doing that. But again, in the developed countries, like in UK, and here, for example, national health sector. So they are using accrual-based accounting in the public sector, in the national health system. So they managed to do that. Why some countries do that, some countries fail to do that? Again, these are connected with the broader cultural, political, economic factors that I introduced at the beginning of the lecture. So go to the next slide. So, for example, they try to bring this participatory budgeting under the notion of new public management. So then what happened to the participatory budgeting? So there were people that sometimes in some countries, the participatory budgeting, they just invite some of the people that they randomly select from the villages, just to get a legitimacy. Legitimacy means the local government officials, they say, yeah, we are doing the participatory budgeting. So these are the pictures of the people who are involved. So they consult the people just to show that they are next level regional government and the national government official, to show participatory budgeting is nicely maintained, people are involved, just some pictures and the evidence that the involvement of the people. So real people are not involved. Real ideas of the people are not getting into account. In Indonesia, I mean, this is very different. But in Indonesia, what happened is, you have Musarembang, I think if I use the word correctly, that's a Musarembang is the system that related to participatory budgeting. It's a national policy, Musarembang. So it's coming from the central government, regions, and the local. So the local governments must call the local people into meetings before the budget implementation, after the budget implementation. And these meeting reports go into the regional level Musarembang. And then the regional level, I have a paper published in one of these good journals with a colleague in Indonesia about this participatory budgeting in Indonesia. So then, even in that Indonesian participatory budgeting, there was so much of legitimacy. That means so much of informality is involved. That means in Indonesia, you have the community participation in the history. In the rural villages of East Java, you have this community involvement with the local decision making. So what happened is, the local officials, they duplicate this local participation. One is for the formal participatory budgeting, the another for their political voting and getting the side of agendas and the popularity. So there were two meetings. One is the political meeting for the political interest, another meeting to follow the Musarembang policies in the local level. So there was a kind of a misuse or misapplication of participatory budgeting even in Indonesian villages. So what happened is, what I'm saying is, my point is, in many countries, in many emerging countries, this participatory budgeting not working. It is used as a kind of another symbolic way of showing the national government and the World Bank, oh, we are following your new public management initiatives that you train us to do at the local level, train us to do to make us accountable. Because participatory budgeting make the local governments accountable to the people. Why and how? Because participatory budgeting makes citizens involved with the resource allocations. The local communities' involvement with the local decisions make the local governments accountable to the local people. That's the assumption. But it's never happened in the same way. It never happened in the same way. So there are a disconnection between the people and the local government decisions making. So what I am showing is that, so it is fair in the real sense, this public sector accounting, the reforms, the accrual based accounting, and then some of the participatory budgeting type initiatives to democratize and then to make local governments accountable, it's never worked. So then the governance and the accountability and the governance. So when you say governance, governance mean accountability, transparency, and the participation. Governance, if you define governance, governance mean accountability, transparency, and the participation. So then this new public management, including accrual accounts, new public management in general, try to promote this accountability and the transparency and the participation of the people. But it never happened. Why it never happened? Never happened successful. It happened to some extent, obviously, to some extent. In some countries, it happened better. And some countries, it never happened. So this is where results are varied because results are very different in different countries because of the cultural, political, economic, and the legal, regulatory environments, and then how one main thing is the political influence, politicians, and the culture. So, and the people, how the people perceive this, to what extent people involved with the local government's work. I think even in Indonesia, the people involved with the local governments are not at the best, and people losing the trust, and they are, even though they are encouraged to participate, some politically interested people are involving. I think young generation not involved, not connected with the local government level decision making at all. So there's a disconnection between culturally, there's a disconnection between the public sector entities and the citizens in many ways. So go to the next slide. So failure of participatory budgeting, I talked already about that. So some of the things, lack of proper citizen participation. So that means the people are not getting involved. I already mentioned the duplication. That means, like in Indonesian case, that the local government formally doing one thing, there's an informal work within the villages that people are always working together. So there is one thing in the informally, socially, and the culturally, and the local government use this as a kind of a mechanism to prove they are very accountable. So they are using another meeting in the local level because of the Musarambang, that the regulation. And then slow and bureaucratic process. That's another very common thing. That means there's so much of regulation, so much of political influence. So decision making not fast. So very much politically interest-driven decision making. So these are some of the highlights, that there are many other reasons. Some of the highlights why participatory budgeting failed. Why I highlight participated budgeting as the main thing? So this is the main tool that the World Bank and IMF used and advised, promoted in the emerging economies to improve the efficiency of public sector organizations, to improve the efficiency of the public sector operations, and improve the accountability of the public sector organizations, participatory budgeting. That's why I highlighted that. Go to the next slide. All right, I'm coming to the sustainability thing. Now, I think I stop for the time being here. And then I mentioned about these accruals and not successful. Then what happened? What's the IPSAS committee did for the public sector standards then? What they have done was that because the cash accounting still used, and some public countries, they tried to use accruals. So what they did was they introduced the new set of standards to public sector. They call it modified public sector accounting standards. Modified public sector accounting standards. That means that they encourage to use the accrual-based accounting, but at the same time, they were encouraging people to use accrual accounting, but they were allowing public sector organizations to use cash-based accounting as they did in the past. So then they are saying they are training them to say, okay, you do it cash-based accounting, but as far as possible, add some accrual-based reports, attach accrual-based reports to show you accountability to the public. So then it's more like they are accepting public sector accrual accounting in the public sector cannot be implemented as expected. But at the same time, it takes time to this transformation. So they are with this new standards, what we call modified cash-based accounting for the modified IPSAS to the public sector. They are saying you follow cash-based accounting, but for some major operations, you introduce accrual-based reporting as well to make it a little bit more accountability into your practice. So then there's a new form of this IPSAS, the public sector accounting standards, came into existence recent past and in early 2000, I think. So then now at the moment, what happened is a mix of cash and accrual-based accounting very much used in the public sector all over the world, in emerging economies, in emerging. So then, in the other side, some of the new mechanisms they introduced, the participatory budgeting, still under consideration, still in debate, still in challenge at the implementation level. So it is also not working properly because of the factors I already stated: cultural, political, economic factors, right? So that's the context of the public sector accounting and accountability. So if you want to know the research about what's being done in the Tolia, you want me to discuss about the public sector accounting accountability research, or go slowly to the sustainability development?
It can be both, but we can done it the first one and then go to the second one.
Okay, so then you want me to then give time for students to ask any questions?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm happy to answer any of your questions at this stage.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Prof. It's quite interesting here that knowing why we are still in the emerging economies as but because we understand that Indonesia, yeah, still less developed country and we are still developing. But here, surprisingly, China also faced the similar situation with us, so that China also still in we can consider it as the emerging economies. Okay. So before we start before we switch to the next sessions, maybe we can have the Q&A session first. So anyone want to ask question to Professor Kellam related to the first topic, public sector accounting and accountability practices in the emerging economies? It's such interesting topic here. Anyone? Yes, we have one question here, Prof.
Okay.
Fitria, do you want to ask the question directly to Professor Kellam? Okay, maybe I can read it, Prof. What do you think about educational background of budget preparer on quality of budgeting in the public sector?
Sorry?
Okay, the question from Fitria is, what do you think about educational background of budget preparer on quality of budgeting in public sector? Because
I think that's a very good question, because I think I can see it. What do you think about education background? Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Actually, I haven't mentioned that in my presentation. When you mentioned the failure of public sector accounting, I mean, use and introducing accruals in the public sector. So one of the reasons for the failure is there are two things. One of the reasons is the lack of government accountants, enough government accountants. So this government accounting profession is underdeveloped. That means in many of these emerging economies. So there are public sector accountants, but the public sector accounting body is not same as private sector accounting bodies in the world. Private sector accounting, we have ACCAs, CIMAs, and the local accounting bodies. So very much professionalized. There are exams, qualifications, people are trained. But in the public sector, we don't have this sort of a training and well-organized accounting body in many of these countries. So still in the emerging stage. So there are some countries doing initiatives and creating these professional standards and training accountants. But this training, the professional accounting bodies are not well established, not strong enough to manage the public sector entities in most of these countries. Number two is that even with the professional, without professional accounting bodies, then we can argue we can train the existing officers. So the training and the capacities of the local officers are at very low level. I mean, capacity is not very strong. So if you want to have accrual accounting, for example, you need to train the people. So then forget the accountants, officials. So then the awareness and the training of the public sector officials are not at a very strong level. So then the capacity and the knowledge on public sector accounting standards and how to introduce these accruals, for example, is at a very, very low level in many of these countries. So one side, the accounting profession is weak. The other side, the education, the training of these public sector officials and the people, the decision makers are not up to the standards, up to the expected standards by the World Bank and everything. So I think that's a very good point because I talk always mostly about culture, politics, and regulations. But I think this question reminded me, I missed that another good point. So I'm thankful to this student who asked the question. This is one of the biggest challenges of the public sector organizations. The lack of knowledge and the training, enough training and the knowledge, and unavailability of well-established government accounting bodies and accounting institution, and to train the accountants, to produce government accountants. Lack of that is another weakness in most of these countries. I think that's a very good question. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Talking about the wait a minute. Yes, talking about the accountant, the proper accountant to carry out the accrual basis for the public sector. You mentioned that it's like the country or the government probably have less people to take care of it, right? However, as what we all know that our accountant associations time to time also carry out such as that not only the formal educations for the accountant or the academician, sorry, but we also try to make the impact broader to the village level. So it means that what I can see here, do you think that the diverse area of Indonesia, because we are archipelago countries, this is also one of the factor of the failure to implement the accrual basis in our public sector? Because
I
it's
think
also mixed up
obviously.
with the culture.
Yeah, I think that's why I started with this culture, political economy, that angle at the beginning of the lecture. So I think I mentioned it's very different to each and every country. When you compare one country with the other, there are various different reasons. Now in China, they have centralized decision making, and very government even interfere with a small decision in the local level. So very much controlled economy. So in the same way, Indonesia, in the other way, you are very much like decentralized. Local regional government. So then if you see Papua, your Papua region and the central government, I know about so many conflicts going on because Papua government not listening to central government, right? So Papua government hire private consultants to manage participatory budgeting. right? But then if you go to
Yes.
East Java, very culturally very different. So then the people are involved with everything in the with the local government, because the local government chief and the people are very much connected. They are same people. So then the very friendly approach to participate in the budgeting. Come to Jakarta or Yogyakarta. Yogyakarta, you have Sultan as the governor. Go to
Okay.
Jakarta, you have politically appointed regional government. So it's
Yes,
different.
and quite
So then
tense.
you can't expect everything happen in the same way in each local government in Indonesia, because of this very different nature of the regional government, and then also what you call decentralized governance mechanisms, and the local cultures. You have very unique local cultures. In Javanese culture is very different to Jakarta culture, right? So Jakarta more like urban setting and very much Protestant type thing. I mean, I'm a person who travel. Indonesia is
Yeah.
it's a country that I travel most, other than UK, obviously, in my
Right.
own country. So I mean, I was in Yogyakarta about 4 months ago in UGM. So, and I have projects in 5 Indonesian regions. Very soon we are starting 5 Indonesian regions,
Oh,
very different regions. I know what you're asking. Your question is very important and very valid. And yeah, the results are different. That's the answer. The results are very different because of the cultural, like you said, different cultures, different administrative systems in different countries. Okay.
yes. And moreover, we all have like 100 different culture within one country and many culture in one island, something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
So it's like
Exactly.
a huge homework for our government. Yes,
Yeah.
following the questions, we have 2 other questions here, Prof.
Yeah.
How can the public sector adapt quickly to emergency situations such as a pandemic, and what can be learned from the entity's response?
That's a very challenging question, because we have so much of research cluster in relation to this pandemic, and how the public sector manage the pandemic, and how they react to emergency situations, the disaster management, and in particular in relation to pandemic. That's why I'm one of the researchers published, I think, about 4 or 5 papers on pandemic situation. I know it well, but it's difficult to answer even after publishing many papers on this topic. But one thing is that in relation to pandemic, one thing we learn, one thing we realize is the financial resilience, economic and financial resilience to pandemic in our countries, in emerging economies, even in developed economies. So it's been exposed. Many countries haven't got any financial resilience. They are not prepared for the emergency situations. So and also when the emergency happened, decision making, there's no what you call strategic decision making units to handle the pandemic. So people become panic, and people get the money from other budgets. There's a budget for some other expenses. It's like the house without a plan for them. There's no savings. If you take a family management, so then if you don't have any saved account to when you are in a financial shortage and the need, you can get the money from that account and then handle the sudden financial crisis of the family, because you have some support from we know at least there are some relatives who can give us money. So we are sure about this. Some kind of a mechanism we should have, even in the family, how we manage this sort of financial difficulty happening in each month. So if we don't have that plan, when something happens, we become bankrupt, right? So family spend credit cards. So then when you use credit cards, you have to pay that back. This is what happened to public sector in emerging economies during the pandemic. So they were not prepared for any disasters. Like Indonesia, for example, Indonesia, you have disasters all the time, natural disasters, earthquakes. And Sumatra and some of these regions, you always have these what you call natural disasters and then emergency situations. So then this government should be prepared how to handle the public welfare, how to not just saving the lives. It's about how to finance the situations when in the emergency situations, because there are vulnerable people, there are poor people, vulnerable, like fishermen and women. They are living closer to the sea, offshore.
Yes.
So that means you have to make sure there's a way to look after them, not about their lives, looking after them economically. So, and then and the welfare systems during pandemic, what to do. So these sort of public finances, you must have an emergency budget, you must have some sort of preparation in your local budget and the national budget for the emergency. So none of these countries were prepared themselves at the time. And also one thing we have to acknowledge, this pandemic, the COVID-19 was unprecedented. It happened 100 years ago, or 150 or 100 years ago, not in our lifetime. So then after that, this is a very new thing, unexpected thing happened. So no one is prepared, even UK, even US. We are struggling after pandemic. So we cannot blame one single country for that because of the unprecedented situation created by pandemic, but unprecedented. But still, it is exposed. Sri Lanka became bankrupt because of pandemic, and Egypt very close. Pakistan saved by some Arabic countries. So likewise, I can highlight in Nepal very closer to bankruptcy. So it's because of the lack of preparedness for emergency situations by the national governments. It filtered into local governments as well. There's no emergency management in the public sector in any of these countries. There are some management systems, they say, but they are not really prepared enough to handle this unprecedented pandemic. Pandemic is pandemic. It's not just an earthquake, isn't it? That's why it's called pandemic, right?
Yeah, so true. Okay, that's quite interesting. Prof, considering also during the pandemic, one case that actually you mentioned from the beginning, the big problem of emerging countries here related to the corruptions, the huge corruptions happen even during the pandemic. That's
it's happened in the large scale. Happened in the large scale.
So true.
I think not just the pandemic, in every emergency situation, corruption doubled or tripled.
So true.
And after tsunami, I think suddenly politicians become the richer people and the officials become more richer. I mean, I know Sri Lankan example. There are some studies on that. So some people who involved with even Red Cross, local Red Cross, they become richer than before the tsunami. So that is the very common example. I can challenge anyone not happy with me. I'm saying that. It's not about I'm saying. I can prove that with evidence.
Yeah, so true. That's why the situation actually interesting, because for some people maybe suffering, but other it's kind of opportunity.
Yeah, they are always playing with the vulnerable, the powerful people in any of these emerging economies. What they do is they are exploiting the poor people, the vulnerable people in those countries. I'm not talking about Indonesia. I'm talking about emerging economies in general.
Yes.
So that's the typical story. That's the very common story. So we as researchers, they have two things. Maybe these girls and the boys are young generation, including yourself. So we have two things that as academics in particular, that we need to be aware about what's going on. So we have to research and then expose these people and these practices happening in these countries, our own countries, your own country. That's what your duty. Otherwise, if you are not doing that, who else? Who else? It's not about publishing something and getting the promotion. Yes, that's your personal objective. But then you must have a bigger objective, even as young accountants or young auditors, your students, I mean, and whoever the young generation taking over the country's organizations in the future. They have a duty to be accountable themselves, and accountable to the whatever taxpayers or investors from private sector. Because the private sector also, there are so many of corruption, private sector as well, right?
Yes.
Enron, Lehman Brothers, big companies, they found tax avoidance. They are also criminals. They are bigger criminals than public sector people. More private sector people are more criminals. So what I'm saying is that we have a responsibility as future generation. I mean, your young students. I mean, we are not anymore
Yes.
young, right? So we're trying
Yes,
our
so
best
true.
to educate. These lectures are about educating new generation about these issues that what we experience in our lifetime. So then first thing is to realize it, understand it, and they become accountable citizens. And then become activists in a way when they work, and academics when we write. Like I'm doing, I'm exposing, I'm trying to tell the world that whenever I write, whenever I talk, this is what's happening, guys. So some of the times when I talk, there were public sector officials in the audience and World Bank officials in the audience. So what? They need to understand the reality. They themselves are corrupt. Public sector officials are also corrupt, right? They
Yes.
get the consultancy money and then they say, we train this number of people and then report and produce the accounts. But
Differently.
they also corrupt, right?
Hmm,
So that's
so
the
true.
reality. Yeah, in living at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting, Prof. Okay, thank you. Maybe for these sessions, we accept one more questions from student. Joanna,
Yeah.
can you join us to ask the question directly to Professor Kellum? Joanna, can you hear me? This one, Joanna.
So there's a question in the I think I
Yeah,
can
in the
see
chat
that
box.
in the meeting
Okay.
chat saying
Okay.
what do you think if the public sector accounting is lagging behind the private sector? Is lagging behind the private sector. How could that happen? What do you think? Yeah, I think I explained clearly, because there are sectors like private sector is managed with the obligation to the investors, right? So then the investors either they appoint a director board, and there's a direct reporting to the investors, even though other stakeholders are also important, the community and others as secondary and tertiary. But so because of the profit motive and direct control and the reporting to private sector, so they are having a very line of communication and accountability directly to the people giving them the money. But the public sector is very different. The public sector, the people, investors are the taxpayers, right? Taxpayers. So government collecting the tax, and then the government collects some revenues running some public sector enterprises. So even in that, the owners are public sector. Money is for the public sector. Other organizations, money is taken from pension accounts and all these various public fundings that use. So what I mean is that the public sector, the investors are the public. So then in that case, the accountability and the reporting to the general public. So when it's come to that thing, is massive. And then the public sector, other thing is that the main thing is the decision makers are politicians. So because of the national policies and then the publicly appointed representatives in the parliament, they set up the policies, they decide the resource allocations in the national economy. So that's because of that, then so much of corruption and all these issues that we talk happen. So then how we close this gap between public sector and the private sector? So bringing the private sector accounting into public sector, we talk about that as well. So it's not working because of the capacity issues, because of the cultural issues in the local level, and because of the political influences, and because of the lack of public accounting body in the national level and the trained public accountants to manage these things. And even if they train public sector accountants, where is their authority? How they operate without any political influence, right? So that's the biggest challenge, that making countries, public sector operations politically neutral. Is it possible? It's impossible. So that's what it is lagging. I mean, public sector, related to your question, public sector is lagging behind the private sector because of these reasons. So can we address, what do you think? Can we address these reasons? Yes, we can. But it's not about like in the books, like regulating something and issuing accounting standards. But we need the people to come out and then make their voice. Think about the elections. When you appoint a political leader, how many of our people are thinking about the leaders based on their qualification, professional qualifications, or their history of their work in the earlier political career, and then ignoring the family and the religion and various other factors? I don't think the majority think that. They appoint the politically corrupted, well-known corrupt people again and again. So how you expect a public sector closer to a private sector? So always you will be lagged behind from the private sector because you make the wrong decision from very beginning. You appoint politically corrupt people to the parliament again and again. Because maybe you think he's the guy from good family, right? He's the guy from our wealthy family and we respect the Sultan. So that culture has to be changed. And that's very common in any country you talk. I'm not talking about Indonesia. I'm talking in general. So
Yeah, but that's
it's a
quite true.
whole mess. It's a whole mess, a mess up situation that I don't know when to change. Now the COVID made it worse. The whole world is in a mess now. Even developed countries, if you name a country, all are struggling at the moment, the public sector. So private sector as well. When public sector struggles, private sector also starts struggling. Private sector cannot function without the public sector, because that's where the country, everything, the foundations set up.
Okay,
Right.
thank you very much, Prof. Khalil. And that's related to our current situations because we are approaching the elections, the presidential elections next year. And that's most of those are true actually, because somehow when we choose our representative in the parliament, we actually don't know about them. We only choose based on what given by them, and they don't try to make us understand about the qualification they have and what they can do for us as the citizen. Okay, thank you very
Yeah,
much,
I
Prof.
think if you have a professor or someone applying for the presidency, no one will vote the professor, right? I'm not saying professors are good, but I mean, just taking one example, someone who talk nicely about economic policy and regulation, and then kind of more academic stuff. People never vote to that person, think yes, he's a kind of idiot or something. People would start saying that, and then go for the other guys that who are well-known corrupt people. That's the normal.
And even celebrity.
Yeah, celebrities and very nice actor. Oh, he's in the Indonesian films. He is. Oh, right. So that guy win the election, not the academic guys, right? That's the way the world is all about in everywhere, not only in Indonesia or Malaysia, but that's how it is. And then you start blaming after 3 years again. This guy is very bad to our country and something. Oh, that's the sort of this mentality is what they're driving our countries into these mad situations. So, I mean, people ask questions in the account. This is accounting lecture, not about your elections or something. But how you do public sector accounting without ignoring this political context, cultural political context? There's no accounting in the public sector without connecting to politics and the cultures of your country. It's a joke if we just talk about accounting in the room without discussing, I can't talk about politics. Wow, scared to talk about. How you talk about public sector accounting without talking about politics of that country? Indonesia, Nigeria, public sector accounting in Nigeria. How you talk about public sector in Nigeria about the corruption index #1, right?
Yeah.
So how we talk about Nigerian accounting without talking about corruption? So it is just I think that is what my always that is something your students can carry after this session. Not about how to account, how to prepare accounts. That they can learn from textbooks. I don't need to talk here about that.
So
But they
true.
need to understand the reality that they face. They are living in this right moment in relation to public sector accounting and accountability.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, for the interesting discussions. And I think this is the end of the first sessions.
Yeah, so we
And
take 5 minutes break,
5 minute
or
breaks. Yes,
or maybe we now 33. We start
yes.
at 9:40.
Okay, okay. Then it's like 7
7
minutes.
minutes. 7
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah. We start at
Okay, thank
9:40.
you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Jadi untuk sesi kedua nanti dimulai pukul, kalau di sini jam 3.40 ya. Kita short break sebentar.
Hello.
Hi, Prof.
Hi. You
Yes,
can start sharing that sustainability
the
slide.
sustainability.
Sustainability, yeah.
Okay,
Because I
Anggita,
think
can you
the
help? Oh, Zainal. Yes, the sustainability first.
I think the other one is bit of
The
advanced, so I don't
empirical
think that's
study. Yes. Okay, Prof, it's presented right now. The
yeah.
sustainability.
Yeah. So then I start the lecture now. In this, I just mentioned sustainability because I'm trying to connect the sustainability, the word, the notion, or the concept, or whatever way you see it, with the public sector at the end. But you should know first what is sustainability is about, right? So I think most of us talk about sustainability accounting without knowing what the sustainability really is about. So I thought this giving a little bit of understanding to sustainability more broadly, and then we go to application of sustainability into public sector. We can touch sustainable cities, we can touch sustainable development goals. All this comes next, right? So go to the next first slide there. Yeah. So you can see everything is green now, right? In the background as well. Right? So this is what I think I mentioned. So when we connect the sustainability into accounting, we call social responsibility reporting, and then we have ESGs, environmental and sustainability, what you call environment, society, and governance, how this the SCG reporting, and then there's a sustainability reporting, and then sustainable development goals in the public sector. There's the one we call local voluntary reviews, and there are so many accounting jargons, accounting concepts connected with the sustainability. First thing about knowing about what is sustainability. Okay, go to the next slide. Yeah, so as you see in this slide, sustainability is not just about the environment, even though my slides also showing all these greens and the light bulbs and everything, but that is what the popular way people see the sustainability. But sustainability not just about the environment. So sustainability has everything, everyone and everything connected. So that means some way the human, the economic sustainability. That we realize this during pandemic, there's no economic sustainability and economic resilience. So not the financial resilience, broader economic resilience. There's no sustainable economic practices in none of these emerging economies, or none of the countries in the world. So we were not prepared to look after human during pandemic. So there's no economic sustainability at all, right? So that's what I mean. There's one example connecting the previous session. So there are factors. We need to think about the future, obviously. So future generations, and we already destroy the planet. There's no argument. We are having global warming, flooding, earthquakes, tsunamis, building collapse, and so many things. In addition to this bombing and other people killing people, there's another disaster. That's nothing to do with the sustainability. There's people-made disaster, man-made disasters. We can't control man-made disasters. We are talking about natural disasters. That's the pathetic situation we are living as human being and in this right now in this world, this planet. But forget this man-made disasters. Forget that. So just talk about the theory behind this sustainability. It's very difficult, but we'll try to do that. And then, so we have the responsibility for the future generations, looking after the planet. So when we are looking after the planet and then future of this Earth, and then in relation to environment, so we have to create a balance between the economic growth, the environmental care, and the social well-being, because we have to live first. For example, the poor people in this world, you can't meet those people and say, hey guys, we have to save the planet, don't eat. sleep on the roads. Don't try to steal. Stay there, look after the planet, right? So because we have to look after the planet for the future generations. We have to eat first. And you can't tell people living closer to the forest, don't cut the trees. That's their livelihood, right? So they cut the trees and sell as then it generates some incomes. We can't tell them, don't live near this forest. Go and live in a good house. These are poor people. So it's not something that someone knowledgeable should do and think that people can ignore the economic economic factors like daily living and then must consider environment first. Eating, living, having a shelter, having good health is our priority as people. Then only we consider about other things, right? Coming to lectures, you first eat. Before doing a lecture, I ate. I woke up and I had to eat something. I didn't want to do a lecture about sustainability without eating, right? So my health and my social well-being of myself is number one, right? So to me, as a human being. So the same as you guys in the lecture. So what I'm saying is this is a combination of three things or four things: the economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and the social sustainability. So when you talk about sustainability and looking after the planet, it has to be a balance between economic growth, environmental care, and the social well-being. That's what we call three main pillars. I have four. I mentioned human as well, right? So that's why. So go to the next slide. So yeah, so I think I already talked about this. So when we say sustainable development, that's what we hear very much in the public sector. Sustainable development. So we talk development in like 40, 50 years. Still we are under development. We are in the process of development. So the sustainable development is a new thing. So there will be another one in the next year or next 5 years, another one in another 15 years time. We are not developed yet because of the corruption and bureaucracies and all these things we talk in emerging economies. We are still trying to develop our countries, but we will never be developed in the same way, obviously. But still forgetting that again. So if we think about the sustainable development, that's a long-term goal. So we have to implement some systems, frameworks, and the support we need from global, national, and local organizations to achieve this goal of long-term development, economic country development of our countries in a sustainable manner. That means three pillars must be integrated: the society, the economy, and the environment together. So go to the next. So examples. So now, when in the new context, now with sustainable development, or sustainable manufacturing, sustainable business management. So you have this attempt to like modifying the production processes, for example, to emit less waste and emissions, carbon emissions. We try to reduce now to protect the planet. So businesses are still trying to get profits, but in a with one more responsible way, because they have the environmental pillar in the sustainability. They try to do it in a while emitting less waste and the carbon emissions. That's the sort of a way. So that means we are managing the environment while achieving the economic objectives, the businesses. This is what the balancing act I mean. And then use non-toxic or less toxic substances. And the farmers, we have to encourage use very much like organic fertilizers, right? And then what you call compost kind of fertilizers, rather than highly chemical-based, modern imported fertilizers into their farms. And then that's create biodiversity issues in the farming. That's what I'm doing a study in Indonesia very soon with 5 regions, and that's placed in UGM, That's in 5 regions about farming practices in Indonesia. So how the farmers, what their traditional practices, modern practices in relation to ecosystem management. So, and how they contribute to biodiversity in Indonesia. So that's sort of another example, the farming practices. That has economy, that has the social issues, farmers and their social lives, the communities, and that has environment issue, because what the farmers do ultimately end up with problems in the biodiversity and environmental pollution and the soil, for example, protecting the soil and preserving the water. So farmers are contributing so much into this environmental management, ecosystem management. So I'm not going to do too much about this. Go to the next, reduce packaging. That's another well-known thing, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Go to the next one. Yeah. So what is what then when we talk about sustainability, I don't like to talk much about accounting. I always like to talk about much bigger issues, because bigger issues connect with the accounting. That's why. Bigger accounting not works without us, without organizations, without people living in this planet, right? So that's where our own behavior also very important. Like the way you appoint your political leaders, in the same way how you live your own life and then contribute to this the sustainability. Yes, obviously you have to live, you have to eat, you have to have a house, you have to have a room to live, and then you need to have a job to get living. But at the same time, you must do yourself behave as an environmentally, socially responsible citizen, right? So then you have to limit food waste. You talk about consumption, production of the organization. If you are not doing that yourself, you have no right, and you don't need to be in this lecture. You have to go out and enjoy your life, doing the whole corruption and destroying the planet. But you have to start with yourself first before you start becoming an accounting student, right? What is happening? Okay. That's celebrating the sustainability. Yeah. Yeah. So the sustainable traveling, most of us can do sustainable traveling. I'm not saying I'm doing it. I'm very bad in walking and all that. I don't have that habit. I always use a car for small, but at least I have a hybrid car. So that means I'm a bit of a responsible to, environment. That sense, I'm not polluting, not using a diesel car. So hybrid car. So, but that's not the best way. If I can walk, if I can cycle, I have to do that. So then I can contribute to the environmental sustainability myself. So reduce the use of the plastics, for example. So these things are very basic, simple things, but we have to do this ourselves as well. Then we can talk about the organizations when they talk about sustainability reporting and sustainability accounting then afterwards, right? So just go to the next one. Yeah. So sustainable development. So then again, this is another very important concept to public sector accounting, because public sector accounting is about the public sector organizations, the local government mainly, and the central government, regional governments mainly, and even other public sector, say public banks or public microfinance institutions. They all are linking with the development, economic development of the country. So when you talk about economic development, the new World Bank agenda, the IMF agenda, is sustainable development. So you need to know sustainable development to talk about public sector accounting and accountability. That's why I brought this into discussion here. So in the sustainable development framework, there are 5 pillars, so 5 factors that you need to know: the people, the planet, the prosperity, the development progression, peace, and partnerships. So then the question you ask me, to what extent we have the peace, right? Who discuss about the peace? I'm not going to details of these discussions, these points, because that has always controversial ways when I talk. So I just stop into the theory and whatever the framework they promote. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so 5 pillars: the people, planet, prosperity, peace, and the partnership. So then these 5 pillars are very crucial to achieve the sustainability development goals. I think in that sense, people, planet, prosperity, peace, you understand. What's the meaning of the partnerships here? Partnerships mean public sector objectives of sustainable development cannot be achieved without the participation of other stakeholders of that country or the region or the local. So that means private sector and the public sector together, even non-governmental organizations and other organizations and the public, we must work together. It's about co-production, producing the performances and the agendas together. There's no single approach to development anymore. So we have to work together. This is where the sustainable city is coming in, smart cities coming in. Private sector develop the cities with the local government, and they develop, say, water management system, waste management systems. They use technology in collaboration with the local government, right? So then they have plants, they have trees, and then they have the sort of community parks, right? All these things happen broadly in the context of sustainable development, but they do it together. So businesses promote cities together with the local governments, together with the local stakeholders, the public, and representing the public interest in the center of these smart cities. And then they have profits, they earn profits, but at the same time, they express the public interest and the environmental interest as well. So to do that, they need the public in front, state organization like local government to support them, right? And then need the people to behave responsible way, like waste management, and then clean cities and things like that. And so then what I'm saying is the co-production, the partnerships are very important. And public-private partnerships in the public sector management, public-private partnerships. And in that public-private partnerships, what's happening is government give the money to private sector to manage the resources, manage the projects. That's not the real thing here. It's much bigger. Go beyond public-private partnerships and bring the people and everyone concerned into the resource economic management of the. So then into the next level, these 5 pillars broadly bring the ideas of bring the foundations to these are the 5 pillars. Yeah, thanks. So these 5 pillars are connected in sustainability. I mean, 5 factors or 5 concepts. You call it sustainable development. Mean managing these 5, balancing these 5 together. And the co-production or the partnership is the crucial here, because everything else are also important. But then partnership is the way to achieve sustainable development. And the peace, you can't achieve peace without working together. Preserving the planet, that's the same thing. So I think that's what the point I made. So go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. So then those 5 factors or concepts or the pillars set the foundation to this most famous and the most common, most popular, I can say, the ideas of sustainable development goals. So when you do public sector accounts, private sector accounts, and new research in the public or private sector, people use this SDG adaptation as their main thing. And right, to what extent the organizations adopt SDGs and how their environmental performances based on SDGs. That's the funny thing, and people publish a lot, and without going to the substance, without going to the details of reality, and then private sector, for example, they create good impressions in their annual accounts, and they say we are super good in managing SDGs, helping and all environmental governance. We are number one in Indonesia. But if you see how they dump their wastages, how they pollute the rivers and pollute the air, and what chemicals they use in the manufacturing is hidden. in reality, but they report. Don't follow annual reports too much. That's not my advice. It's a private sector thing, not public sector, but still I'm warning you. In your research, you can publish papers, but you can understand accounting by reading papers in the books, textbooks, but don't follow that much because there's so much of manipulations, so much of misreading, so much of impression management, so much of lies, like politicians. The private sector is very good. They are very good liars. So SDGs, coming back to the point here. So you can see the 17 SDGs. And I'm not reading each and every SDG to you, but this is available online. You can see the UN SDG framework and so much of information available. Each of these SDG has further pillars, and then like altogether there are about 365 or 500 details in the smaller indicators to each and every the 17 SDG goals set up here. So if you look at the first 3 or 4, you can see it's focusing on the economic factors of the SDG pillar, and you can see the good health, the zero hunger, poverty, and all that. That's the economic sustainability. And then gender equality, clean, and then decent work, reduce inequalities. Those are about the society, social interests, and decent society, looking after the people. So social aspect of that, right? So, and then the clean water, sustainable cities, life on land, life below water, climate action. These are environmental sustainability, right? So then peace and justice, again, talk about the one of the pillars, like peace pillar, but it can be connected with the people side. That mean social side, people's responsibilities, people's welfare, and that's to me, it's a social side of it. Economics, hunger and all that, and then the social side, the decent work, gender equality and all that, and then responsible consumption, again social, and then climate action, life below, life on land, and all these things are environmental. So in me, there are 3 main things to me. One is the social, other is the economic, fourth is the environment, third, and if I add fourth, human. So when you have these 4 main things, can be 5 P's or whatever, all represented within this SDG goal, 17 goals. But 17 is very important. Partnerships for the goals, working together. There's no one entity, including ourselves, the individuals and organizations first. And in this come to organizations, public, private, non-governmental, community organizations, everyone should work together, the partnerships. That's why new concept of participatory governance. Everyone has a role. All the stakeholders must work together to create sustainable development. That's the theory. That's the conceptual framework. Okay, go to the next one. So in that sense, now I'm slowly coming to this, our accounting related sort of understanding of sustainability. And CSI is one of the old words, right? Corporate social responsibility. I think you have seen so much of research, dissertations, and I think that thing even discussed. But now I think is so much. Is earlier it was talking about the people, how the organizations help the people, right? How the environment helps the people. Now we are going further. It's not just the people. To help the people, you must have sustainable business practices. That means creating a healthy environment, natural environment, not just directed to people individually, but the social and environmental concerns, and that is added to the corporate social responsibility now. So it was not the case earlier. It talked only about the people and highlight about the people. But when you talk about the people, environment was there. But now we add explicitly the environment into the concept of corporate social responsibility. Like we mentioned, carbon emission, low carbon emission is one of the things. So, for example, yeah, go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So then another important concept in the accounting is this ESG, isn't it? ESG, and then this is go to the next one, please. Yeah, next slide. That's more easier. Yeah. So business and the society in that sense, the new concept, because the CSR is now very much broadened into bringing the environment and the society together. So then that's where the stakeholders are not just the now in the new concept, the stakeholders are not just the customers and the unions and the employees. So then there are local communities and the NGOs and the government, and working business in the society is now very much broadening to other stakeholders. And then, for example, employee welfare is very much now in the debatable in the workplace. To what extent we look after our employees' welfare, health and safety, and to what extent we are paying the minimum labor and looking after our creating what is called a work environment following the human rights. And these sort of things become so important. So marketplace, workplace, environment, and the community. So impact on society is becoming so important to in the concept of CSR for the businesses in the modern day businesses. Go to the next slide, please. So one of the other things that we are aware and you are aware is the circular economy. I think to what extent the Indonesia are doing this circular economy. I think your efforts in this circular economy principle is, I think, very high. I am saying that because even the local governments, I visited in some of the local governments in Yogyakarta, they are having these circular economy principles very much into practice. That means, circular economy. That means that it's included that they are like start even they all forms they recycle the waste, the clothes, scrap metals, and electronics, and then and return to the economy, and then what they do is they recycle it, and they use this as a recycle products. They use as raw materials to reproduce something different or the same product or the different products as raw material. So that's the sort of thing recycle economy. That means one way then is reduce the wastage, and then in the other way there's they protect the soil and the other environment by throwing it away, and then not letting it mix with the soil and then upset the carbon credits in the soils by doing that. So some way the circular economy is very much encouraging the businesses to use this never-ending cycle. So usually it's about input and output, but now input and output, input and the production process and the output, again output coming in becoming inputs because of the recycling that they are doing now. So the circular economy idea is that. So businesses are asked to use this circular economy principles. My point I was saying, your local governments, they have this training and some policies to apply this circular economic principles. The local government I visited, they had this what you call social local government managed social enterprises. So they had the concept that they use some used oil, and then they had the what they call reprocessing of oil, used oil, and then after recycling the oil, they producing another form of new products. I can't remember the names and I can't remember that story that much. So then they producing a product as an output of recycled oil, and then selling this product in their local shops and sold by the local people. So local governments, some of the local governments in Indonesia, they used in their state-owned social enterprises. They try to use this recycling approach and circular economic principles, and then they are doing successfully. Some of the local governments, I have to admire that. So I don't think that's nationally spread kind of a thing, but some of the local governments in Indonesia are doing it. So that's the best example. So if anyone interested, I can send you the context. You can go and see how they are applying it. That's one of your own examples, how the local governments doing it. So then what I'm saying is, so in the applying circular economy principles into our manufacturing process, private sector and the public sector, is a must thing now. So with that way, we can reduce the waste and we can reduce the emissions, and then we can reduce the we can use less raw materials into our production. So that way we can contribute to environmental sustainability in the longer term. So you can see this cycle: raw materials, sustainable design, production, distribution, consumption, and then collection of the consumed and the unused or wastages, and then the recycle, and then again going this recycled materials as the inputs to this production process again. So this is continuing. There's no breakup like earlier. Like earlier, when you ask about manufacturing process, you have input and output. You say manufacturing is input and output process. Not anymore. Its output become recycle and used as input again, right? That's the new diagram. Okay, go to the next stage. So here comes your well-known sustainability reporting. So sustainability reporting involved, you can see in the slide. So disclosing reporting is about not the real sustainability practices, Reporting is about how the companies do the sustainability practices. They have to report it to the stakeholders, the investors and the communities and the public. The information about non-financial performances. That means what actions they have taken to have this recycling, what you call circular economic principles. What extent they have took the measures to contribute to social welfare. To what extent they are looking after their employees. What measures the company has taken. So what extent they are helping to community projects like local community parks and so on and so on. So it's like social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, CSR reporting, corporate social responsibility reporting. Now going to another level, now we call it sustainability reporting, right? So so companies are very much give their utmost attention to this because there's a pressure from the government, pressure from the regulators to companies to disclose to what extent they follow the sustainability principles, right? So in a way, it's a corporate audit. In a way, the auditors and the public and the community people and then people who are interested about business practices, they do their audit and to see to what extent this company is responsible to society and the environment. In that sense, what they do is they look at the reports produced by the companies. So for that purpose, companies produce reports to communicate to the public, to the investors in general, to the stakeholders of the company, that this is what we do. This is what we did in the last year. These are the actions we have taken to protect the environment. These are the actions we have taken to protect our employees, to provide welfare to our employees. So then with their report, we make a judgment. This company is very good in terms of managing the sustainability, right? So go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go keep that thing. Go back. So in that sense, so some of the researchers that who are researching on sustainability side, in other words, sustainability reporting researchers, what they do is they look at the annual reports and analyze few things, sustainability reporting principles, they call it. The balance, the report quality by looking at the balance, to what extent they balance the economics, social and environment. And then comparability. They compare one company's performances, sustainability performances with other companies and with the industry. And against the expectation, international expectations, the benchmarks, they measure, they compare it and the measure. And then accuracy. So they judge what extent is accurate with the figures that they disclose in the reports and the narratives, the expressions and the qualitative part they write with the numbers in the balance sheets and the profit and loss statements. Timeliness. We look at what extent this relating to the last year's performances. Timeliness. How new this data, whether these are old data or new things. Reliability. How reliable. So there are some reliability tests and checked audits people do. And then the clarity, clarification and the clarity and how clear this. And then sometimes companies write ambiguous statements and more talks, less work. So clarity on what these things are. So these are the principles that we use to measure sustainability reporting. And then there are papers published based on these measurements of these 5 factors. To measure these 5 factors, people use so many frameworks, internationally accepted frameworks, to make these judgments, how quality these reporting standards and what weaknesses exist in the reports and in the performances of the company. So go to the next slide. So this is one of the very popular, I think, accounting, the measures that the people use is the ESG reporting, people call ESG reporting. Another new accounting research field, people say. It's the same, to me, it's the same old wine or same old soaps in a new bottle or new wrap. We call CSR, we call this and that, and then everything. Now we call ESG reporting. Right? So, but the same thing, same companies do the same thing, same reporting, but we as researchers, we are very fascinated now as ESG. Yeah, we are doing ESG reporting research, right? So that's, I think that's a joke, because it's the same companies, same old manipulations, same old bad tricks that the companies do. So I come to that little later, this what the companies really do. So the environmental, social and governance, ESG, is a framework used to assess organizations' business practices and performance on various sustainability and ethical issues. So another framework. So it provides a way to measure business risks and opportunities to those areas. There are detailed indicators. There are detailed indicators to measure ESG. So we use this not me. I'm not using that. I never use. I will never use this frameworks. It's just we are misleading ourselves by doing that. So, but researchers, I call it with respect. Some accounting researchers, they use this as a framework. These indicators, they publish so many of papers, but same companies do the same old tricks, same old realities. Okay, go to the next slide. Yeah, this is another example. I said that more details. I said there are so many of indicators under this tree. So environment, for example, biodiversity loss, climate change, renewable energy, deforestation, likewise governance, risk mitigation, shareholder activism, social, diversity, inclusion, race, gender. So these factors they use to judge, measure the corporate performances, right? Go to the next slide. I don't like reading this stuff. Yeah, okay. So those ESG reporting is very much about the private sector, corporates, businesses. So when it's come to public sector, how we measure the sustainability performances of the public sector to the public sector, the tool, the framework we have for the public sector is Sustainable Development Goals. If you download this link in the UN websites, that you have like very brilliant pictures and the detailed accounts, at least 365 kind of indicators to understand each and every SDG. So you can do research in like unlimited number of research in the next decade using SDGs if we are doing good research projects. And then it includes sustainable consumption, it includes environmental value judgments, net zero activities. You know, many organizations, including Malang, UGM, you want to have net zero policies to your university practices, and how we do encourage staff to use sustainable transport, and then how introducing water management and then waste management, including and creating waste collection systems and then the recycling processes, and all this within the organizations that we use these net zeros, public sector organizations, based on 17 SDGs, and then we try to look after our employees as well. I don't know what extra measures we have taken, but we claim net zero, only environment we focus, not about the employees and the other stakeholders in the public sector. Public sector very good for bringing some things that apart from the bigger picture. Are we looking after our public sector employees better? No changes happen. It's just the environment. We force the public sector employees to do another extra work, this environment protection. But that's good. At least that's a good start. But net zero, for example. Yeah, go to the next slide. So the example. So I'm actually one of these people working in the local governments in UK, and I have worked in the other countries as well, obviously, and African countries, some South Asian countries, but more importantly, I'm working in UK and this with the UK councils. And right now, I'm doing one with one of the councils here. I'm using, I think that I talk next, but I did this thing about months ago. That we in one of these councils, they had this local river called River Con, and then they were producing blue and green infrastructure development report plan. What does mean? Blue mean the river based, green mean the parks and the local forest, and then how to protect. So then when we were developing the local economy, the businesses, the local council had to look at the wildlife and the water, and then more species, the habitats we call it, and then we help them to develop a bit of ecotourism waste, and then environmentally friendly sort of smart community traveling, encouraging that, and protecting the biodiversity. Some kind of a plan. We invited local stakeholders into discussions, like we had focus group meetings, and then at the end we developed a local government plan to promote economic activities within the council. In your case, not the council, you call it what is called local government units. So, and then more like environmentally and socially friendly economic plan to the local council. So these some of the examples I mentioned here. We discussed about how to encourage people community walking, and how to create green parks, electric scooters, and then promoting businesses to invest in the local shops and start new ecotourist practices without damaging the river-based blue and green infrastructure, and without letting the visitors, the tourists, to pollute the local river and the local parks. So how we do that? So we discussed and we developed. This is what we call SDG approach, a strategic sustainable development goals approach to local planning, public sector planning, public sector budgeting. So then public sector, the local organization, the council, they had the budget. They have a budget. They had the budget in our case. So they were discussing how they should spend the budget. What activity plans. So that's why we involve, helping them to decide the budget implementation with the participation of the stakeholders based on SDGs. So SDG adaptation in the heart of local government planning and the budgeting and the implementation of the budget. This is one of the examples. Go on to the next. And then other very important concepts, I think, is in relation to local governments, is the voluntary local reviews. That's how I'm doing one local voluntary local review now with one of the councils. What is this local voluntary local review mean? The councils now use the local government now use SDGs as the performance measure, as a tool of measuring their own performances, SDG goals. So what they do is now, they use these SDG indicators as a lens to see to what extent they are achieving the SDG goals in their budgets, in their plans, local planning. So what I'm doing now is with one of the councils, I'm interviewing the council members, I'm interviewing local, I interviewed some community members, community organizations, and then analyze to what extent their plans are closer to the SDGs. And then where are the deviations? What are the areas they can improve in their future planning and future budget expense. So then this is more like performance measurement of the local councils in relation to local councils against the SDG goals. So this is how the sustainability SDG goals are connected in other way, not just the planning to decide where to spend the money, to assess their own performances. SDG is one of the main criteria that the local governments use. I think I covered most of the things, and I think one of the other things I missed in my talk is when I mentioned about the private sector, even though my presentation is about public sector, I mentioned very much about corporate social responsibility, and I talk about the ESG reporting and all that. So one of the things is greenwashing. One of the famous research field is greenwashing. Green, greenwashing. Greenwashing means this private sector organization, what they mostly do is they report nice pictures of what they are doing, and they are saying we are doing this, we are net zero following, and then we are helping the community, we are having a recycle manufacturing, we are all a big talk like politicians. They talk big. In reality, they don't deliver. What they do is they hide what they are really doing, and they report fake and they mislead the public and the investors and the public, and by reporting false information. So if you analyze, even though you can analyze in data based on annual reports, the half of this data about sustainability reporting, sustainability activities in the annual reports are fake, are utter lies. So this is why I am challenging quantitative researchers all the time. Don't use this public sector data or IMF data or national government, central bank data or annual report data into your research. It's all right. You can do a dissertation to that. You can't challenge the data. You need data. But beyond that, if you are doing a PhD or master thesis, then you must think about, you have to wake up. You have to understand there's a lot of greenwashing going on, misleading reports and fake data, manipulative data, false data, lies, utter lies are in the reports. How you identify these things? You have to do much bigger investigation, talking to people and interviewing people, looking at newspaper reports, looking at the court cases, talk to community organizations and find out how this company in your area, what they are doing. They will start talking about the company, not the company themselves. Company says, we are very good. You see, guys, but they always greenwashing. That means they hide who they are, really. Right? So you have to identify who they are, not the company. They are the thieves. They are the criminals. The criminals report themselves and say, we are good citizens, right? Right? So if you believe criminals, you don't need the police. You don't need the detectives. So when you are doing research, you have to be detectives. You have to be the police. You have to first listen to the criminal. Always criminal has something to say. They have their own rights. But starting with what the criminals say, you have to go further and dig deeper to find out what actually the companies do. So you have to understand there's a greenwashing involved. In other words, we call it impression management. Companies create good impressions in relation to sustainability. I'm talking about sustainability. In relation to sustainability. That means sustainability means not just the environment. The people, economic, social, and environment. That means we have social aspects, the community, people-related factors, and environmental aspects. Because they are only worried about economics, the profits. So there's a lot of greenwashing, a lot of impression management. So you have to dig deeper. Same thing in the public sector. So public sector entities also now learning the tricks now. local politicians and the councillors, they start big, talk big. We have net zero adaptation in the council, right? So you need to understand what extent they actually adapt, right? so this greenwashing now happening even in the public sector as well. So that is where I think we need to be kind of a active citizens. So we must have a climate literacy, literacy on sustainability. We must literate ourselves on the sustainability as citizens, as students, as future employees. This is what the most important thing to me, not just analyzing annual reports and saying this is fantastic against ESG indicators. Don't write, even I don't like to work with researchers who are doing this sort of research, to be honest. So I think little bigger and outside this, what you call controlled world, socially constructed world. This whole thing is socially constructed as we follow SDGs, we follow ESGs. Companies are saying everything very good, like the politicians. So managers are like politicians now. There's no difference between the politicians and the managers of the companies. They are same. And so we need to go beyond this, what we discuss in the class, what we read in the UN frameworks, what we read in the World Bank, accrual, adaptation, IPSAS, SDG reporting. But there are so many of other things, the greenwashing, for example. So people are involving in this, creating good images and hiding themselves under the blanket of ESG and sustainability. So we need to be more careful about understanding real practices in the real business world. Okay, I think that's it I wanted to say. Thank you very much. So there are some research publications on these topics. I'm not going to discuss those things. I believe that's next level for these students. They are in the undergraduate level. So the next level at the postgraduate level, maybe one day when I visit Malang, I can talk about the research, what research being done, what the findings, where the challenging the new directions in the sustainability accounting research. That's a different lecture. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Callum. We are waiting for that moment actually. But even though we also have the graduate students join us for today's class, but I do agree with you that for the empirical discussions related to this topic, we need a great length of time, and it must be the next. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we accepting the questions from the students, Prof. Here I'm interested in the greenwashing because yes, typically we only conduct the research by calculating the or based on the annual report or something like that. And for this greenwashing, I would like to know how to detect it, detect the act of the greenwashing, and how we can overweigh the positive impact that actually can be gained by this greenwashing practice, because it depends on the perspective of the people, the citizen, over the real drawbacks.
I think this is a good question again, but one of my PhD students from Indonesia, from UGM, he's starting in January. So I'm referring to that story first, and then this guy, his first PhD proposal was rejected at Sheffield because he was talking about just ESG reporting. And then I met him, and then I asked him to bring a little bit more greenwashing angle into it. Now he resubmitted his proposal yesterday. And so the point I'm making with that is that if you are in the research, there are two levels. One is you can describe the things as it is, like looking at the annual reports and make a judgment and using ESG indicators to measure corporate performances. But that's a one level. It's a descriptive level. But if you go beyond, whether this is real or not, obviously it's challenging. But you can look at, for example, there are this guy that I'm referring, he was looking at some companies in certain industries, right? I don't mention the industry. So there are publicly known information about some companies doing some environmental problems to the citizens, to the communities. These are famous companies. There are reports, court cases, newspaper reports, right? And then those were early indicators to him, this my student, that these companies who reported nice stories in the annual reports, they were actually doing the opposite, right? And then his case is now he's going to follow it up with interviews with the citizens, interviews with some of the employees, interviews with the non-governmental organizations who are challenging the practices of these organizations. And then that's a different investigation. So then finding the greenwashing, you can't do by looking at the annual reports. So you have to be a bit more qualitative researcher and like a detective. So criminals, they do the murders or something and they hide. If you just talk to the criminal and then what the criminal says, then there's no investigation. So you have to go out and talk to the other people who were friends, supposed to be friends of the criminal and who saw the criminal, and check the CCTVs and then find out what he said and compare what he said with his real activities, real things that he did during this time of the crime. You can see from CCTVs and talking to others. They saw them somewhere else. He said, I was here at home, but he was in somewhere else. These things. That's how the detectives, Sherlock Holmes, find the criminal, right? So you have to be a detective when it's come to greenwashing research. You can't just be a painter or drawing nice pictures based on what you see, what's the ink that given to you, and then pencils given to in your hand. Right?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So true. So yeah, so it means that we also cannot like overweigh the impact, the positive impact that actually expected from conducting that greenwashing and with the real drawbacks. Because
The
it's like the
impact you mean?
manipulations, right?
No, I
Yes.
think what is the real impact is that we have to force the corporate to be responsible citizens. At the end of the day, that's what I said there, as academics, we have two things. One is we need papers for our confirmation or promotions. But at the same time, we have to understand as responsible citizens of this planet. And then we need to make sure we expose the criminals. It can criminals, I mean, not the small guys, poor guys, pickpocketing, and then making our life difficult in the streets. They are innocent people. They are innocent criminals. The corporate owners, the corporate managers, they are the biggest criminals in this planet. So we are not talking about them. We are talking about the small guys stealing and doing burglary in our houses and all that. They steal because they don't have money to live. They don't have a way to live. Why are we worried about these people in the streets who are pickpocketing and doing silly, petty things? They do that because they don't have a way to live. We have to be so sorry for them, help them. Not putting them into jail. Yes, we need to, but we have to rehabilitate them. But the biggest criminals are the corporate. They involve in the politicians are running the corporate as well. They give money to politicians for the election campaigns. Who are sponsoring your political candidates? The corporate. Because when the politicians come to power, they help the corporate. Right?
Yeah.
They avoid the tax. Right? They have to pay tax. So we are paying tax because we are public servants. We can't avoid tax. Right? Corporate, they can avoid tax. So that's where the criminals. I think we need to understand, not just this is accounting I'm talking of, but these are accounts. People use accounting to manipulate tax. This is a tax system. People use accounting, ESG reporting to manipulate, to mislead the public. So accountants are the biggest culprits. We help the corporate and the public sector people to manipulate and exploit other people. we as accountants. We need to get the first blame ourselves. So now we have to stop this and then become a bit of responsible citizens, even though we are accountants, and then criticize our own accountants and expose them that what they do. This is what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah. So true that it also cannot be done by conducting the quantitative research for sure.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
where I didn't say that, but this is where the problem is, main problem is. So quantitative research always staying with the data, available data, and quantifying, modeling the world, right?
Yeah.
Modeling the world. You are relying on big data sets, right? So
Yeah.
your Indonesian central bank's data sets about Indonesian economic statistics, right? And then you are relying on annual reports produced by your what do you call stock exchange or your database of annual reports of the listed companies, right? So your analysis
Yes.
all based on what they say, what they report. Or World Bank reports, right? World Bank's
Yes.
international
So
data
true.
sets, right? So World Bank collecting data from central banks of these other national economies, right? The countries. They collect the statistics from the central banks. They prepare World Bank database, right? So central bank of these countries, what they do, you know what they do, right? So how you make a statistical generalizations using this data and creating a better world. And we are talking about SDGs now. It's a joke.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you, Prof. It must be a long discussion if we start to
Yes.
discuss about this issue. Okay. Okay. We have questions here from our graduate students actually,
Yeah,
and
please.
here's 3 questions. So Yongki, do you want to ask the questions directly to Professor Callum?
You mean in the chat room?
Yes, in
Meeting
the
chat.
chat. Okay, just through the chat box. Okay. Okay, the first one, Professor, what is the practical difference between CSR and ESG? Besides that, are there other concepts such as CSR and ESG related to accounting that are being discussed by researchers today? Okay, beside the new concept of CSR using the ESG, especially now that world has been hit by COVID-19, which causes sustainability to become an important topic. That's the first question.
Yeah, I can see these 3 together. I can talk these 3 together with one simple
Okay,
answer. In a
I
way, I
see.
think these ESG, CSRs, and there may be another will come out in the next years, so years to come, and these all things are at the end doing the same thing. What is the same thing? Same thing mean that the people who develop these frameworks, UN or World Bank or your government, whoever, they adopt this, because the World Bank and UN, they develop frameworks like disaster Sendai framework, disaster risk governance. These frameworks, the governments bring into the national level, and national level, they ask local governments to follow it, and then national level policies to the private sector, accounting bodies in the other side, accounting bodies promote, they develop new standards in relation to this universal global policies, right, to corporate and the public. So at the end, it's the same thing. What is the same thing? Making sure the companies adopt nice, good practices when they are achieving profits. We encourage companies and the government public sector organizations to be responsible to the public, responsible to the investors, responsible to the community. So then, how we measure these performances? Time to time, there are some frameworks coming. So we use these frameworks to measure the performances. In the history, it was CSR. Now it is ESG. And newest thing is SDG. Right? So there's no difference in between these things at the end. There are some words different. There are some variables in your words, variables, new variables, new frameworks, new benchmarks, right? So in that, so then that's another question, whether these are compulsory or whether these are mandatory, in other words, or voluntary. Most of these are voluntary, not mandatory. But some countries, they say you must do. If the country government says you must have CSR or ESG reporting, then it becomes compulsory. I think, as far as I understand it, these are voluntary. But but the people more and more asking to more disclosures from the corporate, from the public sector organization, disclose more. There's a demand to disclose more. Because private sector, to face the competition and to create a good image, to increase more profits, they have to follow these voluntary practices. These are, to a great extent, these are voluntary. So Indonesia, yes, there's a national policy to have SDGs. Yes. So again, these are not compulsory to local governments. So these are mandated, not mandated, these are voluntary. But everyone trained, everyone encouraged at the national policy to follow these frameworks. That's the answer I can give, common answer to these three questions. This is a good question, but I think the same thing, I can say different example. World Bank talk about poverty alleviation. So many years. They use different words. They say globalization and localization, attacking poverty, poverty alleviation. Now they have another new one, sustainable development. Right? So it's the same thing. World Bank trying to doing the same thing. Same old thing. Africa remain poor. South Asia remain poor. World peace, no world peace. Right? Where is the world peace? No peace at all. So you have to be real people to understand the reality. Don't follow this big language, big frameworks. Yes, as researchers, we have to follow what is available. As students, we have to learn what is the things going on in the companies and the business and the public sector. We need to learn these things. SDGs, we need to learn. ESGs, we need to learn. And the research about ESGs, we need to learn. But as researchers or as people, we need to think more than that. That's what my invitation. Okay.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
other
Thank you very
questions?
much. Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. Okay. So any other questions from the students? Or you can raise your hand. Or taking time to type, it's better to raise your hand and mention the questions directly. Ariani, do you have questions? Or something to discuss with Professor Kelum? Okay, maybe I would like to invite our lecturer here, Professor Kelum, Miss Miranti. Can you join us here? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Professor
Hi,
Kalum.
hi,
How are
hi.
you? Yeah, maybe I have some question for you.
Yeah.
Lately I talk a lot with my colleague in Australia that
Yeah.
she told us about fake sustainability report. What do
Yeah.
you think about fake sustainability report, Professor Kalum?
Yeah, this is the one that I mentioned under the notion of greenwashing, right? Greenwashing, exactly. Meaning of greenwashing is that because the companies, I think I talk about impression management.
Yeah.
It's the other another word to the same thing. What? Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying all the companies and everything company reports are fake. Some companies try some good things, and there are companies like, for example, Scandinavian companies, some European companies in general. They are not always like fake. They do tax avoidance and those sort of things, but in relation to environment and for the employee protection, they are very responsible. Sometimes in some companies to some extent. But even the same companies, when they go to Bangladesh or Vietnam or India or Sri Lanka with the outsourced manufacturing practices, then everything starts there. This is the global supply chain. I'm talking about sustainability, right? So then when they go to those factories, you can see the slave labor, places where no one can work. There's no health and safety. There's no rights. They are not paid minimum wage, right? And the women are exploited. Women are assaulted. Recruitment based on not the open criteria, based on some personal connections. I can go further and further. So that's the social responsibility, and I mean sustainability, social related sustainability, society related sustainability, right? So sustainability is not just the environment. So how about the environment? There are so many of pollution, so many of dumping wastages and using chemicals, hazardous things to in the product manufacturing, carbon emissions, and all these sort of things. So if you look at the annual reports of these companies, they never disclose these things. They only select the ones that they think good, create a good image for their companies, right? It's like the politicians. About the national economies, they carefully select some statistics that they can highlight economy. They created this number of jobs. We created this new number of companies. We developed this industry. But they don't say in that process how much money they take out. They just talk about 10% of the budget. What happened to the other 90%? That's what we call creative accounts. Creative accounts. The accounting. Again, accounting. Creative accounting. That means they are creatively selecting numbers that give them advantage and hiding the numbers the other side. Numbers that creating controversies. They hide those numbers. That's the normal practice in most of the companies. That's why the word that we use, the numbers are fake. The accounts are fake. Not all accounts are fake. I don't say that. I'm not extremist person say all the companies are corrupt, all the companies do this, and everything companies do are bad. But I am always believing relativism. Relativism means everything depending on something. Everything one thing. When we say a person is good, there's no absolutely good people. Every person has something wrong, something bad. So we compare that person with other persons and say, oh, this is a good guy. Comparing other guys, right? If someone say I'm good, doesn't mean I'm very brilliant. I have no problems, no baggages. People can say me good comparing other academics, right? That's why it's always relative. So companies same. So companies, everything they do is not bad. Don't misunderstand. But if you go deeper, dig deeper, every company do some things that as part of the greenwashing. But there are companies operating in our world, emerging economies, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh. Many things that they do are not good, right? So using annual reports of those companies and say fantastic social sustainability reporting paper doesn't make any.
So is it enough to compare about the sustainability report with the GRI index to investigate, is this the sustainability report is fake or no?
No, that is just the starting point. That's a good, because there are different levels of our investigation, isn't it? So we can't ignore secondary data. So you
Okay.
have to look at the secondary data, annual reports, central bank reports, World Bank reports, and then we have to start. I'm talking broadly, not just answering your own one. So in general, it's good to use secondary data. I'm not saying secondary data totally meaningless. Sometimes using secondary data, analyzing secondary data against these ESG tools, ESG indicators, it's a good start. Maybe some of these analyses indicate something's not right. So how do you answer something is not right? This question. You have to go to the next level of investigation, right?
Yes.
This is what detectives do. They go to their, check the forensics, talk to the witness or the victim. That's the start. Okay, that's fine. Police report, there's a report written in the police station. We start with that. But the detectives go further, right? So what happens is quantitative research, you stay there and stop it. And you are saying, why your research objective is this? When there's a criticism from other people about where is this variable, you say, it's a control variable. You are saying it's a control variable. So people cannot answer any further questions. It's control. Gender. It's a control variable. If it's a control variable, then how you ask about the question in relation to gender? but how you control gender? That's the main issue to me. How you control gender? That's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
The women exploitation and presence of women in the board. So whether it makes any sense, or you can't control gender and look at only men, women, and then look at men. So it's just no such thing in the research. The research is all about men, women, everyone in the boards, everyone in the. So we have to look at more bigger picture, right? So you publish one paper, gender is control, another paper, gender is independent and other variable control, right? So two papers from the same study. None of these papers make any sense to me. I'm not using the word came to my mind. I'm controlling my vocabulary and the words I use. I just say nice words, say doesn't make any sense.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kalum, from the insight about the fake sustainability reporting.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks.
is there one question from
Yeah.
the lecturer? Or
Okay.
Yes, we have one question here, Prof, on the chat box. How can specific research distinguish between truly measurable sustainability claims and greenwashing?
Scientific research distinguish between truly measurable sustainability. I believe that this scientific research he means is quantitative research, I guess, right? And quantitative research, I guess. So I think the problem is like, I think I answered to this question already. That means when it's come to greenwashing, you can't just rely on if you want to investigate greenwashing, you can't just rely on the secondary data or quantitative analysis, because quantitative analysis based on the available data, based on the data sets and available data, secondary data. So in that sense, even if you do a survey, quantitative survey, you're asking from the culprits how you are doing the things. These culprits, they say yes or no, and in the Likert scale, they give you 1 to 5 measure. Right? You think these people are giving a good right answer. You assume that respondents are right. You based on the respondents, you select biased samples as well. So then you are generalizing statistically in the scientific research. I believe scientific research, this gentleman may mean quantitative research. So then you stay there, you stop your study, and then you generalize statistically what you found from the secondary data and survey data. But the bigger question remains same. You are not answering the question. You're not answering the research question at all. So your judgment is like you are sending someone to jail based on the early evidence, and then the real thief giving the evidence in hiding himself and passing the blame to someone or telling a good story about himself or herself. You are using those data and generalize and say and send someone else to jail. maybe mostly the employees are not working hard, community is lying, and this community is politically motivated, things like that. You are sending the wrong person to jail. To find out the real culprit, you have to go beyond your originally first investigation. So I don't think anyone can answer greenwashing questions without just following scientific research or quantitative research. I mean, quantitative research. You have to go beyond quantitative research. I'm not saying quantitative research are not needed or bad. Quantitative research are not enough to understand greenwashing issues. I think it's easy, isn't it? People go to McDonald's, right? Or KFC. In your country, you have similar things. I know McDonald's also there. So, but people go to McDonald's. Why? You don't need to cook, right? Easy cooking, no cooking. Have fun. McDonald's. And also it gives the value, prestigious thing like, oh, McDonald's people, right? So what happened at the end? You create obesity and you create there's so many other issues, right? Family issues as well. Keep going further. I don't say details, but obesity, best example in UK, right? So that's another wrong consumption patterns and behaviors, consumer behaviors. And you end up with other bigger problems, but then you don't realize what we are doing. So we just do the easy thing, and destroying ourselves by doing easy thing. Ourselves mean the whole broader society and the environment I'm talking about in this context of sustainability, right?
Yeah.
If you talk to farmers and do a questionnaire survey of farmers, so you can get very nice pictures. But if you go deep and see the things they do in the farming to get this beautiful bananas and all these vegetables to market, the process they follow, you see that you are eating chemicals, right? 45 days chicken, right? Broiler chicken. If you look at the annual reports, they are not doing anything bad. But if you look at the real thing they do in the manufacturing process, how they create this chicken, right? So then you don't know why people are having cancer and all heart issues and liver issues. And some areas in Sri Lanka, for example, there are so many kidney issues. People start dying, still dying. No one investigating why. You can see the fertilizer the farmers are using, not the small farmers, big farmers. That mean farm companies. If you look at their annual reports, they are very good citizens, right? How you avoid these people died from kidney disease? So quantitative research, according to that, these farm companies are brilliant, right? Their reports are very good against the SDG indicators, ESG indicators, right? Because it's easy for us to do. Why? What the hell? How I go to these villages and interview people? Why I spend time? There's no money. Who's giving the money to go there? I have to teach. Yeah, true. Then stop research. Stop being in this job. Go and do something. Work for them. Right? That's another thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that here our students actually also interested in ESG and also greenwashing itself. But as you mentioned previously, we are limited in the model actually when we need to conduct the scientific research that mentioned by the students to figure out what actually happened behind the scene, behind the things that we try to figure out, which is here is greenwashing itself.
I
Okay,
think the
thank you
better
very
way
much.
to use this term is social science research. The best way to do social science research.
Yes.
Scientific research is already you program something in your mind in support of quantitative approach. Cause and effect relationship. Scientific research based on cause and effect relationship. That's good for bioscience and natural science, not for the social science.
Not for the social. Yes.
Social science is
Okay.
about people. So we are people researching about people. Companies managed by people, right?
Yeah.
So then this cause and effect approach, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Actually, during the discussion, I also tried to figure out how it can be done using the quantitative data, how it can be figure out the real things that you mentioned previously. And I tried to figure out, yeah, I cannot answer it using the statistical result.
Yeah, that's why people now more
That's
and more
the
using
thing.
mixed methods. Mixed methods.
Yeah.
So that means you
Mixed
are not
method.
totally pushing out quantitative research. You start with the quantitative research and then you continue. You don't stop after the results. After the
Yes.
descriptive results, you don't stop, you continue further. So how far you go in this further determine how good you are and your findings are. I
Yes.
think you as new generation of people, new academics, emerging academics, you have to have at least this understanding of social science research. Unfortunately, because of maybe time and the resources and the capacities, you may stay in the quantitative world, but you must have
Yeah.
at least acknowledgement and understanding. We are only doing part of the, only a smaller part of the investigation. That
And also
itself makes
conducting the data analysis quantitative is more easier,
yeah.
like much
You can
easier than the
you can
qualitative
borrow
one.
someone else's model. You can borrow
Yes.
someone else's models at minimum. So you don't need to
Mm.
even put effort to develop or adapt your own model. So that's what people do, borrowing someone else's model at the undergraduate or master level. And in the PhD level, you probably develop your own model based on the
Yeah.
old assumptions, neoclassical assumptions.
Yes.
When you use neoclassical assumptions itself, in the neoclassical economics, always more variables are constant, fixed. Only few independent variables. When one is independent, the many variables are fixed. Isn't it? I know
Yes.
quantitative research. I learned macroeconomics, microeconomics, quantitative research. I know it. Even I'm supervising dissertations, all quantitative research. But the fact remains same. Fact is that this is not answering any of the real research questions in this planet. That's the point.
Yes. And that's why also preparing the other slide for the empirical discussions. But yeah, we need like break line of time to discuss it. Okay, thank you very much, Professor.
Oh,
And
no,
it's
no.
already over 5 p.m. here.
Yeah. It's time to
Yeah.
stop.
Yes, and we also have no other questions from the students. So I think this is the end of these sessions, Professor. So before we call off the day, I would like to give the conclusions from today's discussions. I'll start with the sustainability, and it is about the action to ensure the balance about the principle of future growth, human economy, environment, or planet, and then the society. Sustainable development needs the long-term support on the implementations of system, framework, and then support from the global, national, and local entities. And at this point, we are human is the locomotor, and more or less we have important roles to make it possible to happen, or even more. On top of that, government as the rulers of one country to commute the life cycle plays important roles in the managing most of aspects to achieve the sustainable development agenda. And the specific role here can be taken from the accounting perspective or system. Moreover, from the public sector is taking steps to reduce the unbiased provisions to promote sustainable economy. And public sector needs to gather all aspects together by optimizing the participatory of the private sectors, the human, the people, the environment to realize the quality of management. For example, here, as the SSS explained previously, the implementation of the circular economy and also the realization of the related party to carry out the sustainability reporting and also the program for the people and for the environment. And this is the end of the second round of accounting talk series held by the accounting department. Before we end the sessions, I would like to invite all the participants here to open the camera. We need to take picture together because we haven't done it in the beginning. Please open your camera, students, all the participants here. Let's make it quick. Okay, we are waiting. Okay. Come on. All right. I'll start to capture the first page. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think the first page is enough here because the other page still close the camera. Thank you very much, Professor Callum, for such insightful knowledge and also contented discussions that we just had today. And I'm also proud either knowing that actually our students also interested in this topic and try to engage more in the discussions to gain more knowledge on the public sector accounting and also sustainability. And hopefully today's program will give more benefits to all than what we have expected in the beginning. And on the behalf of Accounting Department, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Negeri Malang, we'd like to say thank you to our prominent speaker, Professor Callum. Once again, thank you so much, Prof.
No, thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sparing your precious time for us because I know
Oh,
this
that's
is
fine.
your
I'm anyway visiting professor at your
busy
department. So
schedule.
formally,
So
I'm one of the colleagues. So that's why it's my responsibility.
yeah, yeah. Moreover,
CSR,
that we have
CSR, corporate
CSR.
social responsibility.
Yeah, because you bring it out today,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's one of our responsibility either.
All right.
And thank you to all participants here, especially to the committees of today's program. You are cool guys, and our apology for any inconvenience and like during the program. Hope to engage with you soon again in the next agenda, the next round of accounting talk series.
Oh yeah. Maybe I probably more like I can even come in person because I know there's a sort of agreement. I can visit as
Okay.
well if I'm available. So I will decide it. Talk to Pooji and decide it later.
Okay, but hopefully we can invite you in person again,
It's
Professor,
possible,
in
but
the
not
next agenda.
not sure yet. But
Not this.
because I'm very busy next term. But if not, then
Yes.
we can have another online session. If not, yeah.
Okay, thank you very
Alright.
much.
Alright.
Okay,
Okay, then.
everybody, this is a wrap. Thank you very much for today. Have a nice day. And for you, Professor, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much
Assalamualaikum
to all of you.
warahmatullahi
Okay.
wabarakatuh.
Right.
See you
Okay,
guys.
then. Take care.
Thank you,
Take
Professor
care.
Callum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank